My name is Dzierwa, and I've been an SI at JCC for 3 semesters now. And this is Erin Mortella, and she's also been an SI leader at JCC for 3 semesters. Our presentation is about how to prepare and have SI sessions right before an exam for reviewing. We picked this topic because from our experience, we tend to get more students that attend right before an exam. So we just think it's very important to run good review sessions. So in preparing for an SI review session, it's a good idea and a helpful idea to start from the very beginning of the semester, starting to highlight key terms, make note of problems that maybe students are struggling with throughout the semester, talk to the instructor and see if they have any knowledge about what students have struggled with in the past in previous semesters, and start creating example problems that you can use in your session. It's good to do this from the beginning of the semester, otherwise you will end up like me the night before the review session, going through the chapters and the material, trying to find problems to use and what kind of concepts the students struggle with.
No, we don't do that, do we?
I was just kidding, I don't do that.
So creating an outline, basically this is what needs to be covered in your session. This is how we do it. We do an outline for ourselves, a way for us to stay organized. So for example, if you're doing a review session on fractions, then make notes of what about fractions you need to cover. So steps for adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. And when you actually make your outline, it doesn't have to be something the students understand, it's just for you. So you could use it as your planning sheet too. At JCC we have 2 planning sheets to show that we prepared for our sessions. So here's an example. So like Taylor said, highlight key terms. So here we have terms to define in the session. So for example, LCD. You're not going to know how to add or subtract fractions if you don't define what an LCD is. And then we just went on adding fractions, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. And again, this is just notes for you to understand. Like your students don't even need to see this. You just check it off as you go, make sure you got everything that needs to be done. And then examples right on there. You can just push your examples so you're not flipping through the book. Come time for the session, you already have it all done.
Okay, so you've all prepared for a session, but the thing that you can't prepare for is how many students are going to show up. So it's good to have a game plan for smaller groups and then for larger groups. For smaller groups, we like to use little mini whiteboards if you have access to them. You can just put students in pairs, have them work on a problem together, and then just hold up their answer on their whiteboard, and then you can kind of get an overview of what each group is doing, make sure they're on the right track. Or if you have an exam review that's supplied by the instructor, you could have them working on that in small groups. And then with larger groups, we like to do games like Jeopardy or some sort of competitive review game. For me personally, I think that the competitive fun games kind of relieve the stress of the exam and still get them to focus on the materials, the math that is going to be on the exam, but in a less tense environment.
So we want to know how you guys prepare for your sessions, what kind of techniques you use. Is there anything you found to work in your sessions, review sessions really well, or that haven't worked? For example, one time I put everybody in groups, and there's naturally a group leader pretty much in every group. And this group leader, he took on the role of teaching everybody how to do a problem. However, he was using a different process than we used in class, so it kind of backfired. So just be aware of things like that if you decide to do group work.
And neither of us have experience as tutors, so if any of you are tutors, we would like to hear kind of what you do if students are coming in right before an exam and need some help with review, because obviously you don't have sessions with students.
One of the big things that tends to happen is they won't come in for the entire semester. but the week before the exam, I don't understand any of it. Well, no, we really can't. We can't help you learn an entire course in one night. It's really base by base. You have to judge what they can and can't handle, and if you can't even complete what they want you to do, or what kind of help they expect.
So what do you do, like
What
when
do
they
I
come
do?
in, yeah?
When they come in and they want that review help, I go to the book. Let's see what the chapter review, what the overall review is. Do you have a review? Let's work on problems like that. And I love making use of the whiteboards because I can run through a problem. I can give them another problem like it, and then I'll let them work on it. Let them teach me how to do it. One method I really like to do is show one, do one, and then they'll teach another person, which I'll take on the role of the third person that knows nothing about it. That tends to, it's very
I know that as an SI, it's kind of easier for us because we set up worksheets and things like that, and we can always print off extra copies and just hold on to extra of those. So we're always prepared for whatever questions the students ask from previous sessions. You know, I know tutors are put kind of more on the spot with it.
When I was in SI for one of the science courses, something I found helpful was each week I would make up a mock quiz, but I would just save it on my computer, so when finals time came over, I would print out all those mock quizzes, and then we had our own little review just from stuff that we would work on over the entire semester. That was helpful.
Well, I'm a math professor, I have lots of ideas. So, a couple of things. I mean, and I agree with, I don't know who that is, but I agree with you that you have to set boundaries. And you have to say, you know, at some point, and this can be difficult, especially if you have a lot of students in the room, but you can't spin your wheels on the student that really needs to take the entire course again. Because that person will drain you dry that entire night, and you won't be able to, I hate to say it, it's sort of like triage. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, everybody's coming into the emergency room with like, and there are some gunshot wound victims that you cannot save. You just can't, you know? So like, dude, I've got 2 hours. Unless I'm gonna transplant my brain into yours, you're not gonna do this. So, you know, and so for those, you know, I mean, you have to have that conversation, or you have to say, okay, look, you know, I can't do this for you, but what I can do is help you with this task. Like, I can teach you how to find the equation of a line from 2 points because you know it's going to be on that algebra exam or whatever. Make it a manageable task because it will not be the laundry list. And let them be working on their worksheet. Say, stay here and work on this review the whole time because almost every math professor gives them one. So you work on that. I've got to help everybody, and you know, do not spend every waking moment going to that student because you won't be able to help everybody else, right? First of all, and second of all, and this is kind of a more advanced technique that you would have to lay some groundwork for, but Taylor knows that we allow notes on stats tests. And what we find is that students have no idea how to make these note sheets, and they're horrible at it. And so one of the things you can do in the review sessions and before is to say, look, you know, as you're going through this review worksheet that I make for you, you know, the professor makes for you, as you're doing that, what are the problems you're running into? Because those need to go on your note sheet. like you don't know what this type of probability is. Why isn't that on your note sheet? Like, where is that even? Trying to train them to catch where they're not understanding and put it on the note sheet to help themselves. That's one thing. And of course, getting them together in groups because you're only one person. And so it depends on the size of the session. But if you have a lot of people in there, you have to get them coalesced into groups that are working on the same things. So you can come and help 3 people at a time rather than helping each person individually, because that just will not work for you. You'll kill yourself. Again, also grabbing other problems, grabbing problems out of their notebooks. I find it really educationally interesting. If the professor gives you the review sheet ahead of time, what might be smart is to kind of look through the pages yourself and just say where in the notes, because we have course packs. So you can go into the course pack and find the example problem that looks just like that. And you do it for yourself ahead of time. Like, oh, this came from this section, page number this, page number this, page number this. You don't have to do them, but you can see where they came from. And so when the students come to you and say, oh, I don't know how to do this problem, You can say, okay, open your notes to page 322, they're right, there's an example just like that. I'll go through that example with you, and what you'll find is they don't have it done, because they weren't there in class, right? And so you're looking at the blank notes, and you're like, well, why didn't you fill it? That's your problem right there, like, you know, you didn't do this, you know. When you're not in class, you still are responsible for that material, and you say that to students, but it just kind of goes over your head. So prepping yourself ahead of time and being able to navigate them back to the notes, and it helps with students trying to get you to take home tests too. Because, you know, if you have a take-home test, so the professor gives it to you, you figure out where the example problems came from in the notes just like it, or the textbook, then you can say, I can't do that for you, but I can show you a problem from the notes or from the textbook that looks a lot like that. I will do that one with you, but you are on your own for your test, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of prep work on your end, in that respect. And I've got more ideas too. That's just a couple of them. Hi, Christina. She's on the SI again.
From a faculty member, what I've seen sometimes is there are certain pods of students on campus that have stacks and stacks of tests from previous, like the athletes. They study together, they have years of tests from chemistry. Test 1, they're all kind of the same stacks. The international students, they study just from the test. Certain floors of the freshman dorms, they have all this stuff, and they don't do well because they tend to rely just on studying the test questions, and it's memorizing kind of how to do that particular question. They don't really have the full context of the question. So I would kind of caution you when they walk in with an old test, don't just help them with that problem. Look for how can that be worded else, a different way. What is the context of the question? What else can be asked from that context? Because it's just not a successful way to learn.
Making sure they understand the concept rather than
Yeah,
that one.
right.
It's actually, you were talking earlier about what do tutors do when they walk in. And I think some of the hardest part that we have to do is, like you said, we have to let them fail sometimes. And it breaks my heart to do it, but otherwise what they learn is that they can BS their way through a class. And then they also end up in the next class a lot of times, and they don't have what they need to have to be successful in the next class. But when you were talking about crib sheets, you know, when we use those crib sheets, I've always told my students to write it up as they're going through the homework. Because the other problem when you have a cheat sheet or a crib sheet on a test is, if you don't know where to find the information, you spend a lot of time, you know, trying to figure out where on the sheet did I write that. I know it's on here somewhere. But if you've been using it all along, you're more comfortable with it. And when my students come in and they're crunched for time, a lot of times what we will do is, instead of actually doing some problems, because usually it's not the actual processing of the problems that they have trouble with, it's the setup of the problems. So we actually go through old tests and read the directions and pick them apart and say, well, what does this word mean? What are they really asking me to do here? You know, which type of problem is this? Or with the math, distance, rate, and time versus mixture problems versus doing a job. How do I set this up? And that, because for most of my students, the words are the problem, the directions are the problem. They can perform 20 different math tricks, but they don't know which math trick they're being asked to perform.
Yeah, the quickest way to lose cooperation from faculty, and I hear this from a number of different faculty members, if we just push these students through class, they just want to pass, they just got to pass this test and they're not really learning, but then they go on to take the next advanced course and they don't have background to achieve. So that faculty member, you know, is kind of, what do we do with this person? Doesn't have the basic skills to pass my class. So it's about learning more than it's about getting numbers in to get them through this test. It is about learning.
Our whole center, where I'm from, I'm actually from Lansing Community College, and our tutoring office is built on the philosophy that we are trying to train people to be independent learners.
Yes.
It's not about getting them through the class. It's about training them how to learn on their own, where to ask the questions, and where to, you know, to develop their own skills. And I think it makes a big difference.
Well, and they're not going to be there all the time.
We're not going to, and it's not about, and I was having this discussion with somebody the other day, it's not about passing the math class. You are not taking this math class most of the time, unless you're going into engineering or science, you are not taking the math class to learn the math. You're taking the math class for so many other skills that you're getting while you're practicing the math.
Well, that's why the SI program is so great, because it's good students modeling their good behaviors. And that's why I was saying, you know, if you come in there and say, okay, I already have, and I would not have a filled out version of worksheets or anything else in front of you necessarily, it depends on your way, but having it so that you know exactly where to go in the course pack to get information on that problem. And they see that as well. They say, oh, you know, I actually didn't take notes in class for no reason. like there's a disconnect between notes and homework and notes and review that you can help them bridge. I'm sorry, I always think of math context, it's just how I roll. But, you know, I'm sure there's something you do for a writing class. I don't know what it would be, but that would, you know, I don't know if they have tests in writing anyway. But I mean, in math and science, if you do a lot of prep work, that's what good students do, and they see that good prep work, and then they can model that behavior for themselves. And I know also the whole highlighting thing, you know, taking your course pack and, you know, highlighting with flags or post-its, you know, the things that were difficult or whatever, things that you could tell this class was struggling with this concept. Or, you know, Christina, as my SI, you know, if there's some section that she knows, as we were walking around, because we'll do group work in class, and they were struggling with 11-1, she knows that section's a problem, so she can highlight them first off, and she knows that, you know, she can prep a little bit ahead of time, knowing which ones were easier and which ones are harder, so.
Speaking of the other subjects, is anybody like a tutor in something other than math that has any ideas?
Oh, see, math is the worst.
No, it's the best.
I know, exactly.
I tutor in geology, and I have a 1-hour geology lab twice a week. With my geology students, their lectures are entirely on PowerPoint. So I have each of my students, they know when you're coming to my lab, like the first time they'll work with somebody else, but then from then on, they know, bring your PowerPoint and bring it with you. And then what I do is I go through, and that's kind of what I do, is I simplify it a little bit, and I highlight the key points throughout this PowerPoint. This is information you need to know. It's gonna come up in future chapters, or it's gonna be on a test or a quiz or whatever. And then they take little notes, and if there's something that they don't understand on that concept, I try to relate it or give him a visual in the best possible method. It's not always possible. I worked with a colorblind student this semester, and if anybody knows geology, you have to identify like 60 rocks and minerals, and when you're colorblind, that's pretty tricky. And the kid started out hoping that he was going to pass with a 2-point, and he told me the other day he's probably going to pull a 3.5. Good. So, but that's just how I handle it in a tutoring sense, because I'm not in the class. I don't have the curriculum, so they have to bring it.
You know, that's actually, you made me think of this, and the dread in my math lab that every student wants to gripe about, but actually can't defend the position for very long, that's a whole other story. But, so my math lab, one of the issues with it is that students are horrible about their own note-taking skills, and therefore, when they have to go to my math lab, have you ever seen the my math lab board? Do you guys, I'm sorry, I'm not JCC people, do you know what my math lab is?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. So they come to you with like pages that are like, they look like they're written in Sanskrit, like things are written in all sorts of different directions, and I'm like, in what math class did you ever have people writing in spirals? Like, never. So then why are you writing in spirals on this paper? Like, what were you thinking? And so, like, I encourage my SI leaders to say, look, if you're having a student struggle with my math lab, get them to the tutoring center and get them printed. Print the worksheets, because you can print every homework problem. It'll print the whole assignment for you. And tell them, prep them ahead of time. It's like, this is you get your frequent flyers in your SI sessions. You know the frequent flyers. So you say, okay, look, frequent flyer person, bring in, oh, I'm so sorry, bring in, now you know how I teach, I just throw things at people and hope things are better. Anyway, bring in those printouts and work with them on that, because if my math lab's sending them into panics, then they're not learning from it. But the point is to practice. They were going to have to do a whole freaking lot of math homework, and no matter what they did. The reason they don't like my math lab is because it shows them in black and white exactly how much they're not doing. So before they were just able to turn it on the test, even though half the pages are blank, and hope for the best. My math lab actually counts how many blanks there are in it. I would say to those students, bring in that stuff, prep yourself ahead of time, let your students know, especially when you're an SI leader, you can build those relationships. Tutoring's a lot harder because you just get random people in off the street, you don't know who this person, but when you're an SI leader, you have those interactions with students in class. You say, you know, okay, I can see you're struggling with this, you know, make sure that you bring these notes with you to our session. Make sure you bring this with you, you know, make sure you print that out, you know, because I'll get students saying, I have problems, they literally walk into class, swear to God. I have a problem with 12.1 number 3 in my math lab. In a class like this, I'm like, really? Let me search my inner computer. No, I have no idea what you're talking about. Did you send it to me? Did you print it? Did you bring me a printout? No. I'm like, well, I'm not a genie, you know, I can't like make it appear, you know, and so you can train them, and in so doing, you're training them to be better students, to be more proactive about what's frustrating them. You know, students want to gripe about it, but they're not very good about trying to take active steps to make it better for themselves. Does that make sense? And you guys, unfortunately, it falls to you to help them bridge that gap. Sorry. No, that's good.
I have a question though. I have a student that I tutor that does the math lab, and they love the math lab because you don't show work. You put your answer in, you get it over with, it's done. But they have a problem taking the written homework and filling it out because they don't know how to put the work down. And I've struggled to try to help them figure out how to get it from his mind to the paper, and I'm running out of options.
So they do like the guess and check.
They can, no, they,
I'm a myth.
he's
Like,
a really bright person, and he can do it all in his head. I have no idea how. He doesn't even need a calculator. He does it all in his head. But he doesn't know how to get it from his head to the paper. Because a lot of teachers will mark him off even if the answer's right, because he didn't show any work. And I've tried. I've even taken it all the way back to elementary. Carrie knows what I'm talking about. And I can't. He's worked with multiple SIs and tutors, and none of us can get him, and he's on his last chance.
Does he have a diagnosed disability?
I know.
Because he actually sounds like I worked with a fellow who had Asperger's, and his disability was that he could do stuff in his head, but he had an inability to write if there's a disconnect between his mind and his hand.
Really?
And so we had to get special accommodations for him because of that. He literally is physically unable to put it onto the paper.
See, none of the people, because I SI at Adrian,
Yeah.
and he's taken 020 and 031 6 times, and I can't get him to pass them. We finally passed the 020. We finally got through that. But we're on our last straw for the 031, and the teachers, the only thing that they've told them is to go back to the lower one and retake them. And it's costing them a lot of money. And nobody has suggested any of that. But, I mean, he's really smart, and he's got it. But a lot of teachers think he's cheating because...
No, a lot of people we get a lot of people that have that particular disability.
Really? I'll have to...
I had a chemical student that had it here. He was on main campus.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to him.
Okay.
One of the things though that I was going to suggest when she was talking about notes and stuff that worked really well in one of my study group sessions was that I had everybody take the day's notes and give them to somebody else in the class to see if they could decipher them. It's a really interesting thing to do sometimes, and I've done the same thing with problems. Like everybody does the same problem, and then says, okay, you know, exchange this with somebody across the way. See if you can follow step by step what they're doing.
No, we can't.
It's a real insight into the fact that you do want to write this as if somebody else might want to follow what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Nobody can read my notes. Only I understand them.
All right, so we're gonna kind of shift gears and just give you an example of what we would do for like a Jeopardy game, for example. So let's. Okay. Okay. So we'll count by ones up until 4.
2, 3,
4,
1,
2,
3,
4, 1.
2.
And do I involve?
Yeah.
3.
4.
I have a 1.
Great.
All right.
So give your group.
Yeah, so let's do like 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't get too far apart.
Don't get too close together.
Do we want to go in numerical order? 1, 2, 3, 4. Group 1 is all together.
Three's over here.
You're three.
I'm a 3.
It's like I'm a math teacher.
I'm a 3.
With threes. Kirby, me too.
Yeah, what mom wrote.
I'm a 3.
Move down a little bit.
We just moved.
All right, so if everybody's situated, how this is gonna kind of work is, one team will pick like the category and value that they want, and we have a question associated with that. Everybody gets the opportunity to work on it, because that's kind of the whole deal with the game, is that everybody's participating, there's not just somebody in the corner doing homework or something during the session. So everybody's gonna be working on it, and the first group to raise their hand, gets to answer the question. If they get it right, they get the point value. If they don't get it right, then another group has an opportunity to go after. No fraction, or no calculators or phones, it's just fractions.
Just
You
fractions.
can do it with
Yeah, they have a lot, come on now.
Do you want me out of this? Because it is kind of unfair.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
No, go ahead, 'cause I want to brag when I whip it.
Yeah, exactly. Does everybody have a pen? Oh, yeah, and you guys have like pen, paper in your bags.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Who's Alex?
If we win, we win something.
Oh. Yes. I'll make it up as we go. There you go. All right,
Okay.
ready? Okay, so let me get this straight. Ones,
We're
twos,
Threes.
threes. Okay. So team 1, you get to pick first. Remember, everybody's working on it. First team to raise their hand. Just shut up there.
You guys do.
Go ahead.
I'm not taking
This is fractions, remember?
All right, choose.
How about division?
Division.
Or how much?
400.
Holy.
How's
Yes.
Okay.
I
Oh.
see that.
Oh, okay.
Do you paper? I've got it.
Do you have time?
I do.
Yeah.
This pen.
You're really into the throw.
She enjoys throwing things.
What was it? 500?
500?
None. I've never said a student that
Division,
lost. Told you the answer.
You guys see that?
Yes.
Oh.
Who had it first?
I do believe
You guys had it first.
Oh, get you some of that. 9 over 2.
Can you
What?
do that?
That's not it?
In 2 weeks.
That's not right.
No, that's
You should
not
consult with your team first.
Okay,
Hold on.
you guys were second.
27 over 5.
What?
27 over 5.
Mixed number.
Oh, is it mixed number?
Mixed number?
Oh, go ahead, it's 27 over five.
Got it.
Oh, they got it.
What is it?
I did not have.
It was 5 and 2/5.
That's what I had.
7
Yeah. Seriously.
So, who got it? So you guys pick.
Hey, pick a game.
Subtraction for 500.
Oh, Reynolds or whatever.
Just create a division.
You should hide it and then shows when you write it out.
I was gonna say, there's gotta be more, right? Oh, good grief.
It's not fair.
16 and 11.
Yes.
What was it?
16 to 8, 11.
All right, so you guys pick.
Let's do mixed operations for 500.
Okay.
Oh.
Here are the groans.
Hold on, I'm just bringing it up.
Yeah, it's okay.
Just remember, this is how we're making our students feel when we're doing this to them.